Welcome to Elselah Books Podcast and the Deep Dive.
Hmm.
Today we're opening up a really remarkable historical file on a life that was just defined by commitment over comfort. William Whiting Borden.
Yeah, and Borden was a name that was famous in his time, born in 1887, into the kind of wealth most of us, can only imagine. His family had a colossal fortune from Colorado silver mining.
Right.
But he's remembered not for the millions he inherited, but for a life that was just so intensely, so radically dedicated to missionary work and spiritual purpose.
And that's the central tension we're really digging into today. We're sifting through sources about this extraordinary young man who died, tragically young, at just 25.
So young.
Our mission is to understand how he used his immense Gilded Age privilege to influence thousands, and why his short life still has such a huge impact. Because here's the paradox. A millionaire planned to dedicate his life to reaching Muslims in Gansu, China, but he passes away in Egypt. He never even got there. Was it all, wasted?
Well, the source materials lay out a really compelling case that it wasn't. They detail his early spiritual life, how he basically single-handedly revolutionized student life at Yale, his decisions, and his legacy. But the real core of his story, it revolves around three defining vows.
Okay.
Three short phrases he physically wrote in his Bible, and they basically became the mandate for his entire existence. So let's unpack them, starting with the first one.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning then, to that first radical choice that set him apart. Borden was born in Chicago, Illinois. His mother, Mary, was a huge influence. She made sure his education was paired with a really serious instruction in Christian faith.
He was raised prayerfully, for sure, but the real catalyst, the moment of awakening, happened right after high school.
The trip, right.
Exactly. In 1904, Borden's 16, and his parents give him the gift you'd expect for an heir of his stature. A lavish trip around the world. Asia, the Middle East, Europe. This wasn't just some quick tour.
No, this was deep exposure. And that journey acted as a profound catalyst. He was no longer just this privileged American kid. He was suddenly face-to-face with global suffering and, crucially, with people who had zero access to the faith that structured his own life. The sources say this just created an overwhelming burden for him to act.
It absolutely did. And it wasn't temporary pity, it cemented his direction. That was later crystallized when he heard a sermon by the evangelist Dr. R.A. Torrey. That experience confirmed it for him. He went to his parents and said he wanted to forego a corporate career entirely. He wanted to be a missionary.
And given his family's wealth, we're talking about a fortune on the scale of the Rockefellers here. That decision must have sent shockwaves through the social elite.
Oh, absolutely. They expected him to take over the family business, maybe go into politics.
Of course.
A friend's reaction really crystallized the sentiment. He famously said Borden was throwing himself away as a missionary, just wasting his talent and his birthright.
So what was Borden's response to that immense pressure?
This is the moment. This is the first vow. In direct personal defiance of that expectation that he had to preserve his comfort, his status, Borden took his Bible and wrote two words.
Which were?
No reserves.
No reserves. That is, wow. That's an incredibly potent phrase, especially for someone inheriting that kind of wealth. We tend to think of reserves as just money, but you're saying it's broader than that.
It has to be. What's fascinating is that no reserves wasn't just a pledge to, be generous later. It meant holding nothing back, personally. He was rejecting the reserves of ease, of reputation, of comfort, even a predictable life path. It was a commitment to total dedication, and it immediately set him on a collision course with everyone in his social class.
Which brings us right to part two. His years at Yale, where this vow was put into radical practice. He arrives on campus in 1905, trying to look like a typical student, despite being one of the wealthiest men in the country.
And he was popular, he had a great personality, he was friendly, a good athlete. He was even elected captain of the wrestling team.
He was a natural leader, but he used that leadership platform for, a singular purpose. He used his own money to support rescue missions in New Haven. His peers quickly realized he wasn't just another rich kid. He was operating on a completely different moral plane.
Yeah, one friend wrote that Borden was spiritually ahead of all of us, and that his strength and stability came directly from that deep dedication.
He didn't hide it either. His motto, which classmates heard all the time, was, "Say no to your self-righteousness and yes to Jesus." It was this clear, actionable guide for his life.
And that clarity made him pretty critical of the purely secular pursuits at the university. There's this one moment. He was really frustrated by the Yale president's commencement speech on having a definite purpose.
Why?
Because, Borden complained, the speech completely failed to mention the source of the power you need to actually overcome temptation. He just saw it as this empty humanistic philosophy that ultimately leads to moral weakness.
So instead of just complaining, he decides to fundamentally change the spiritual landscape of the entire campus. He starts this massive ministry, and it began so simply. Just him and a friend praying together before breakfast.
But that small start just exploded. It shows his strategic mind. By the end of his freshman year, 150 new students were in weekly Bible studies. By his senior year, get this, 1,000 out of Yale's 1,300 students were involved in these prayer groups.
1,000 students. That level of engagement is almost unheard of. And what's remarkable is how intentional he was. He didn't just wait for people to show up.
No, he went after the most resistant ones. His strategy for his second year was brilliant. He divided up more than 300 unresponsive students among the committed ones, creating this peer-to-peer outreach system to make sure everyone was reached.
That's a CEO-level approach to ministry. That takes incredible drive.
It does, and his personal dedication really shines through in one anecdote. A particularly difficult student came up, someone resistant to everything, and the leaders are asking, who will take this person? Who can handle this?
And what did Borden say?
He immediately replied with this famous line, "Allocate him to me."
Allocate him to me. That's not just leadership. That's taking on the hardest job yourself.
It's who he was. He demanded the most of himself. And his work wasn't just on campus. He started the Yale Hope Mission to help men struggling with alcoholism on the streets of New Haven. There are accounts of him taking hungry men to restaurants, paying for it himself, and just sharing the gospel with them one-on-one.
If you connect this back to no reserves, you see it fully realized here. He wasn't reserving his time, his money, his social standing. Nothing. He treated the campus and the city as his immediate mission field.
And that reputation preceded him. After Yale in 1909, he goes to Princeton Theological Seminary. Professor Charles R. Erdman, a highly respected figure, later said Borden had more personal influence on him than any student he'd ever taught.
He was becoming this organizational powerhouse. I mean, in his early 20s, he's a director at Moody Bible Institute, on the board of the National Bible Institute, and managing 4 rescue missions at the same time.
Exactly. He had the profile of a future titan of industry, but it was all directed toward faith and philanthropy. So after Princeton, the offers start pouring in. High-paying jobs that would leverage his Yale degree, his connections, offering immense corporate influence.
And this is where that tension gets really sharp. He's proven he can lead. The world is offering him success by its own metrics, arguing he could do more good with more power.
But he rejected every single one, and he was widely criticized for it. People genuinely believed he was wasting his incredible talent and education by choosing a life of hardship.
So in response to that pressure to, return to a conventional path, he solidifies his choice. He writes the second pair of words in his Bible.
No return.
No returns. That's a statement of absolute permanence.
It is. If no reserves was the initial declaration, no returns was like burning the bridges behind him. He was making a permanent, irreversible break from conventional success, from power, from the ease his fortune afforded him. The decision was final.
So having made that break, he was free to pursue his ultimate goal. His destination was northwestern China, the province of Gansu, specifically to work with the Uyghur Muslims.
Which is an extremely difficult and specialized mission field. It required serious training. So instead of going straight to China, he first traveled to Cairo, Egypt in 1912 to immerse himself in the study of Islam and Arabic.
He really did his homework.
Oh, yeah. He lived with a Syrian family to maximize his immersion. And he wasn't just studying, he was engaging. He spent time on the streets distributing Christian literature that was written in the style of the Quran, trying to bridge that cultural gap.
But tragically, his preparation was cut short.
Devastatingly short. In March of 1913, just a few months into his time in Cairo, William Borden contracted spinal meningitis.
Oh, no.
He died less than 3 weeks later. He was 25 years old. He never reached the shores of China.
The suddenness of that is just shocking. All that preparation, all that commitment, and he never sets foot in his chosen field.
His funeral was in Cairo, his mother was there, and so was Samuel Zwemer, the very missionary whose sermon had inspired Borden's calling years before. Professor Erdman from Princeton suggested the epitaph for his tombstone. It reads, "No explanation for such a life except faith in Christ."
His death was major news back home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reported in almost every American newspaper. The public was mourning, but there was also this inevitable talk that a life of such potential had been tragically cut short.
But his commitment continued to have an impact long after he was gone. And this is where his financial legacy really silenced some of the critics. He bequeathed a massive $800,000, which today would be somewhere between 25 and $30 million, to the China Inland Mission and other Christian organizations.
That is an astonishing gift, especially from someone who dedicated his life to rejecting worldly gain. It's the ultimate paradox.
Yeah, and the China Inland Mission, or CIM, they honored his sacrifice by naming a hospital in Lanzhou, China, the Borden Memorial. It shows that his money, which he had declared no reserves on, was ultimately deployed successfully, even if he wasn't there to see it.
And that brings us to the final summation. We have no reserves, the commitment, we have no returns, the permanence. What was the last statement he left behind?
Before he died, in his final moments, Borden wrote the third and final pair of words in his Bible.
What were they?
No regrets.
No regrets. That's the final analysis of a life lived completely on purpose, no matter how short.
Exactly. And that phrase is the definitive rebuttal to the idea that his life was wasted just because he didn't complete his geographic goal. The source argues, and I think compellingly, that his actual influence, transforming Yale, organizing thousands of students, starting the Hope Mission, leaving that huge financial legacy, all of that expanded the kingdom significantly. His life proved that purpose and the quality of your dedication to your immediate environment can outweigh conventional ideas of longevity or success.
So we've examined the life of a man born into immense wealth, who chose this path of ultimate self-sacrifice, defining his brief life by three radical commitments: no reserves, no returns, and finally, no regrets. Borden's story really challenges you, the listener, to look at your own resources, your time, your talent, your money, and define their purpose beyond just your own comfort.
Right, because his experience highlights a tension every ambitious person faces. Do you maximize your worldly potential? Take the high-paying job, manage the inheritance, or do you focus entirely on a singular, deeply held, often unconventional purpose? Given his immense impact in New Haven, we have to ask, for you, is it better to aim for some distant, large-scale goal or to radically transform the community, the Yale that's right outside your door today? That's a really important question to consider as you pursue your own life goals.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the extraordinary commitment of William Whiting Borden. It is certainly a lot to think about.
Thank you for listening, and do subscribe to our channel for more.